You're now looking at the thalamus, the gateway to the cerebral cortex and a central hub for nearly all sensory, motor, and limbic information traveling to and from the cortex. Each side of the brain has one thalamus, paired across the third ventricle, connected by the small massa intermedia in some individuals. Externally, the thalamus forms the superolateral walls of the third ventricle. Its oval shape can be divided into anterior, medial, and lateral surfaces. The anterior surface borders the interventricular foramen of Monro, where the thalamus meets the fornix and lamina terminalis. On the medial surface, you see the groove for the third ventricle itself. The lateral surface is separated from the internal capsule by a thin leaflet of white matter, the external medullary lamina. The posterior boundary blends into the pulvinar and then the superior colliculus. The tail of the caudate nucleus lies along its anterolateral edge. Internally, the thalamus is organized into numerous nuclei, grouped by location and function. A convenient scheme divides them into anterior, medial, lateral, intralaminar, and reticular groups. The anterior nucleus sits at the front, receiving inputs from the mammillary bodies via the mammillothalamic tract. It projects to the cingulate gyrus and participates in memory and emotional processing as part of the Papez circuit. The medial nuclear group, dominated by the dorsomedial, mediodorsal, nucleus, connects extensively with prefrontal cortex. It integrates limbic signals, decision-making, and executive functions. Damage here can cause deficits in attention, planning, and emotional regulation. The lateral group splits into dorsal and ventral tiers. The dorsal tier nuclei, lateral dorsal, lateral posterior, and pulvinar, relay multimodal association inputs to parietal, temporal, and occipital association cortices, shaping spatial attention, sensory integration, and language functions. The pulvinar, the largest thalamic nucleus, modulates visual and auditory attention and connects with posterior parietal and temporal lobes. The ventral tier contains the ventral anterior and ventral lateral nuclei key relays for motor information. They receive inputs from the basal ganglia, cerebellum, and motor cortex, then project back to primary and premotor cortices to fine-tune movement initiation and coordination. Just inferior lie the ventral posterolateral and ventral posteromedial nuclei, which carry somatosensory information. The VPL receives body sensation via the medial lemniscus and spinothalamic tracts, while the VPM receives face and taste inputs from the trigeminothalamic and solitary tracts. Both project to the postcentral gyrus's primary somatosensory area. Embedded within the internal medullary lamina are the intralaminar nuclei, centromedian, parafascicular, which broadcast diffuse arousal signals to widespread cortical and striatal areas, supporting wakefulness and pain perception. Lateral and midline to those lies the reticular nucleus, a thin sheet wrapping the thalamus that contains only inhibitory neurons. It regulates thalamic output through GABergic modulation, sharpening or dampening signals en route to cortex. All thalamic nuclei share a final thalamocortical projection through the internal capsule's posterior limb or adjacent fibers. Ascending sensory tracts, descending motor fibers, and limbic pathways converge here, then fan out into corona radiata to reach their cortical targets. Functionally, the thalamus is more than a relay. It acts as a filter, gating which signals reach conscious awareness and influencing cortical rhythms through thalamocortical loops. It synchronizes oscillations underlying sleep spindles, attention shifts, and sensory motor integration. Vascular supply comes from branches of the posterior cerebral and posterior communicating arteries, especially thalamo-geniculate and tuberothalamic branches. Infarcts in these vessels produce characteristic syndromes such as sensory loss, thalamic pain syndrome, motor neglect, or behavioral disturbances when the mediodorsal nucleus is involved. Understanding the thalamus's nuclei, connections, and modulatory roles reveals how this compact structure orchestrates perception, movement, emotion, and cognition, truly the central switchboard of the brain.